This is a short video that shows you how to make and use a saddle template for fitting a door frame. Here we have a horizontal section, or plan view if you like. So you're looking down towards the floor of a door saddle template this we're about to make. It's shown there in pink. Could be the actual saddle board itself. So we just go through the points there. It is worth making a saddleboard template because it will help you when you fit the door frame down at the floor level. Even if you're not using a saddleboard, it's still worth using it because it will make sure the jambs are square down at the floor level, and it'll help you to ensure that you have the right width to match the width at the head of the door frame down at the floor level. So from the point of view maybe of the tiler later on, or the guy fitting the floors or whatever, it makes it easier on him, and that guy could be you fitting the floor. So you'll have square cuts around the jamb then and whatnot, and it looks better, and the door will hang better as well. Less chance of being hinge bound. If there's a twist in the door frame, you could end up with a hinge bound situation where the flaps the hinge close before the door fully closes. So that's something you don't want. So I'm just going through the process here as regards making this door saddle. So the first point I just want to make that basically, if you look at the horizontal section through the door jambs and through the architrave, it's the overall distance from here to this point here, which is the overall distance from outside of architrave to outside of architrave, in other words. That determines the length of your saddle template first, because when you're putting in a saddle board, the outside of the architrave and the end of the actual saddle board, if you are putting in saddle boards, must be on the same line, on the same vertical plane. So later on, when you fit your skirting in from here, it'll be buttoned the end of the skirting will be buttoned the end of the saddle and at the end of the architrave at the same time. So I just want to make that point there. So basically what you do is you'll get offcuts off the jambs. Usually when you cut the jambs, you determine the height of your door, and if you're putting a saddle board in, you'll have to allow the jamb to allow for that fact, the length of the jamb, and you'll have offcuts usually then left from your door jambs. So here's our two offcuts. That's an offcut of a door jamb. That's an offcut of an architrave. Hold your margin here. The distance from the rebate to the front of the architrave is your margin distance, usually around 10 millimeter. So usually, if you're setting out your saddle board, you can pin these two together, assemble them together. You can get two other offcuts if you like, and you could get a latch to represent the door section plus the little gap either end to allow for clearance. And what's important anyways is that you'll hold the end of the architrave and architrave jamb assembly, we'll say. Just put a little stroke here. Don't go the whole way. Put a little stroke. Just make sure that this is square, that this line and this line are square to each other. So use your square and put a little stroke there. Do the same the other end. Make sure these two surfaces are square, that surface and that surface, and then put a little tick here, and then later on with your square, then you can square that tick in along there, so you know you have a perfectly square line. And later on, when you're housing out the heads of your door frames, that is housing to housing distance, then you will have marked there along that side of the saddle board. So that'll be good to know. So you can use the actual saddle template to mark your housings on the frame later on if you like, and you'll know they'll match the saddle template in perfectly. So after that, then you'll be tracing around here and tracing all along here, and then you'll be tracing along the back of your architrave, which of course should be parallel to the front edge of your saddle template. So on, as I said earlier, all those lines. So again, you could just put a little tick when you square in here. By the way, the door, this top section, if you notice, the door section is centered on the saddle board. So that's the higher, the saddle board plateaus to a level section, but from here on down in the saddle boards, it's a slope, and from here on down, it's a slope. So if you notice that the door is centered on the saddle board, and of course that means to correlate with that, the rebate on the door frame would also be centered on that saddle board. So you'll also notice at the back here, by the way, the architrave goes all the way down to the floor, so the saddle board does not affect the architrave in on this side. So just want to make that point here. So the animation here will illustrate the notch then you've basically taken off the end of this saddle board template then. As I play it on here for you, you'll see it get wiped out, so you get an idea of what it is we're talking about. So there you are. So the whole frame section was cut away, but the architrave we cut along to the back of the architrave, so the architrave section wasn't cut away. So you have now one end of your saddleboard made, and then you just measure down to the other end, as we stated earlier, and just do the same process the other end, and you'll then have your saddleboard ready for use. Before we progress though, if you notice here, this from this point at the moment, from this point and to this point, it's coming out square. You don't want that square. Usually it's 45 degrees from there to there, or you might have a quarter circle popping around here. I just left the pencil line of the architrave profile there, just to show you how it relates to the actual pink saddleboard or pink saddleboard template. So yeah, so just moving on to now, we're going to go through the process for actually using the template. So here's your horizontal sectional view looking down, or plan view as it were. The saddleboard is there now, left on the floor. It's the frame. When you're fitting your frame, your head would already have established a plaster line, and you would have plumbed down the edge of the frame here to ensure you're coming down. You're holding the plumb plaster line coming down, so that's already plumbed down, and next year you're going to have the face pulled into fairly plumb as well. So that's going to happen here, and you'll also have plumb this edge down, plumb from the established plaster line up the head when you're fitting your door frame. So there's your jamb being pulled into place. So now both the edge and the face are plumb, and you can see everything is nice and square here, fitting nice and square up to the template. So that means there's no twist on that jamb. So then you put in your folded wedges at the back of your jamb down at the floor, a couple inches up from the floor. And by the way, always glue those wedges. Use either panel adhesive, no more nails, or grip right, or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes there might be a gap between the wedge and the back of the frame. And so if you use something like grip right or whatever that can fill large gaps, as well as glue the components together, then use that. Also make sure you cut the wedges flush with the wall, or near enough flush with the wall, but definitely don't have them protruding out past the frame, because if you are, the plaster might come along later on and get a lump hammer and bang in the wedge a bit more, which then will put the frame out of plumb. So just a little point there I just want to make. So yeah. And over here then you'll see the other jamb is in twist. So now that the template has highlighted the fact that there's a twist here that needs to be dealt with. So okay, you're plumbing it, or you're bringing it in to the template, but now what are you going to do next? You know you have to wedge it. So my advice would be to drive a wedge in this gap first where the twist is. So you'll take the twist out of it, as well as bring it into the required width between rebate to rebate. So, and you'll see a wedge fly in here now. So now you've taken the twist out of the jamb with just one wedge, and these wedges, if there's a twist in the jamb, don't fold the wedges together, put them on one over the other. That's why I've darkened that second wedge coming in here, just to illustrate that point.